Every Tuesday morning for 26 years, a woman in Detroit sat in the waiting room of Children's Hospital and paid the medical bills of strangers. She never told anyone her name. She just handed the cashier an envelope of cash and said, "For whoever needs it most today." And every Tuesday morning for 26 years, a man in Phoenix woke up, looked at his daughter, and prayed he'd find the woman who saved her life when she was 3 days old. Neither knew the other was still searching. Neither knew they'd been 60 seconds away from each other 17 times over the years at various charity events, medical conferences, airport terminals. Neither knew that on November 12, 2024, Steve Harvey's phone would ring in the middle of a Family Feud taping, and everything they'd been carrying for 26 years would finally end. It was November 12, 2024, a Tuesday. The Family Feud stage in Atlanta was set for a regular morning taping. The cameras were warming up. The audience was filing in. Two families stood at their podiums, the Morrison family from Phoenix and the Caldwell family from Georgia. Steve Harvey was doing his pre-show walkthrough, checking microphones, joking with the crew. The energy was normal, light, routine. At exactly 9:47 a.m., the cameras started rolling. Steve Harvey stepped to the center of the stage. He said, "Welcome to Family Feud. I'm Steve Harvey, and we've got two great families here today. Let's meet the Morrisons from Phoenix, Arizona." The Morrison family waved. The patriarch, Daniel Morrison, stood at the front, 52 years old, calm demeanor. Next to him, his daughter Angela, 26 years old, wearing a green sweater. But nobody in that studio knew what was about to happen. 60 seconds into filming, Steve Harvey's phone rang. Not his earpiece, his personal cell phone, which was supposed to be off and locked in his dressing room. But he'd kept it in his jacket pocket that morning because his mother had been in the hospital the night before, and he'd told his assistant to call him immediately if anything changed. The phone rang. Steve's face went from relaxed to concerned in half a second. He held up his hand to the families. "Hold on. I'm sorry, I gotta take this." The producers in the booth panicked. "You don't stop a live taping." Steve pulled out his phone. He looked at the caller ID. His face changed. He answered, "What's wrong?" A woman's voice came through, shaking, crying. Not his assistant. Steve said, "Who is this?" The woman said, "Steve, it's Janet. Janet Morrison. I'm Daniel Morrison's wife. I'm not supposed to be calling you, but I'm at Children's Hospital in Detroit right now, and Her voice broke. "I just paid a woman's son's medical bill, and she's wearing a hospital visitor badge from 1998, and the name on it says Angela, and Steve, I think she's the one." Steve Harvey froze. His hand holding the phone started shaking. He looked at Daniel Morrison, standing at the podium. Then he looked at Angela Morrison, standing next to her father. He said into the phone, "Say that again." Janet Morrison said, "The woman at the hospital. She's been paying strangers' medical bills every Tuesday for 26 years. She just paid for a little boy's surgery, and she's wearing an old visitor badge around her neck from 1998 with the name Angela on it. Steve, I think she's the woman who saved our daughter." The studio fell completely silent. Steve Harvey walked away from the podiums. He pressed the phone to his ear. The audience could see his shoulders moving. He was crying. He turned back to the families. He said, "Stop everything. Cut the cameras." The director said through his earpiece, "Steve, we're 60 seconds into taping. We can't—" Steve pulled out his earpiece and dropped it. He looked at Daniel Morrison. He said, "Daniel, I need you to tell everyone in this room what happened to Angela 26 years ago. Right now." Daniel Morrison's face went white. Angela looked at her father. "Dad, what's happening?" Daniel's voice shook when he spoke. When Angela was 3 days old, she stopped breathing. We were at Detroit Children's Hospital. She needed emergency surgery. The insurance company denied it, called it experimental. We didn't have the money. $73,000. We had $900 in our savings account. The hospital said if we couldn't pay, they'd stabilize her and transfer her to county. But the transfer would take 4 hours, and the surgeon said she'd be dead in 2. The audience gasped. Daniel's eyes filled. We were sitting in that waiting room, and I was holding Angela, and my wife Janet was calling everyone we knew, trying to find the money, and I was praying. Just praying. And then this woman walked up to us. I'd never seen her before. She was maybe in her 40s. She asked what was wrong. I told her, and she went to the billing desk and she paid the entire amount, $73,000, in cash, from envelopes she pulled out of her purse. The room went dead silent. Angela Morrison's hand went to her mouth. Daniel continued. I asked her name. She said, "You don't need to know my name. Just love that little girl." I tried to get her contact information so I could pay her back. She refused. She walked out of the hospital, and I never saw her again. For 26 years I've been trying to find her. I've gone back to that hospital every Tuesday. I've hired investigators. I've posted on every platform. Nothing. And my wife Janet, she started going to Children's Hospital in Detroit every Tuesday to do what that woman did. To pay strangers' medical bills, because we couldn't repay her, so we've been trying to pass it forward. Steve Harvey wiped his eyes. He said into the phone, "Janet, are you still there?" Janet said, "I'm here." Steve said, "Is the woman still at the hospital?" Janet said, "She's standing right next to me. Steve, she heard me on the phone. She knows. She's crying." Steve's voice cracked. "Put her on the phone." There was rustling. Then a different voice came through, older, shaking. "Hello?" Steve said, "Ma'am, what's your name?" The woman said, "Rose. Rose Chen." Steve said, "Rose, 26 years ago, did you pay a medical bill for a 3-day-old baby girl at Detroit Children's Hospital?" Rose Chen's voice broke. "Yes." Steve said, "That little girl is standing on my stage right now. She's 26 years old. Her name is Angela Morrison, and her father has been searching for you for 26 years. The studio erupted. People were crying, gasping, standing up. Steve Harvey was openly weeping. Angela Morrison collapsed into her father's arms. Daniel Morrison couldn't speak. He just held his daughter and sobbed. Steve said into the phone, "Rose, why did you do it? Why did you pay for a stranger's baby?" Rose Chen was crying so hard she could barely talk. "Because 17 years before that, someone did it for me." But nobody in that studio knew Rose Chen's story. Nobody knew what she'd been carrying for 43 years. In 1981, Rose Chen was 23 years old, living in San Francisco, working as a seamstress in a textile factory. She made $4.80 an hour. She lived in a studio apartment in Chinatown that cost $340 a month. She'd immigrated from Taiwan 2 years earlier with $200 and a tourist visa that had expired. She was undocumented, terrified, alone. Her parents were still in Taiwan. She couldn't call them because international calls cost $3 a minute, and she was sending every spare dollar back to them because her father had lung disease and couldn't work. Rose got pregnant. The father was a man she'd been dating for 4 months, a line cook at a restaurant in North Beach. When she told him, he disappeared, changed his number, quit his job, vanished. Rose was alone, pregnant, undocumented, making $4.80 an hour. She didn't qualify for Medicaid. She couldn't go to a free clinic because she was terrified they'd report her to immigration. She saved every penny she could. By her 7th month, she had $890. She called a community health center and asked how much it cost to deliver a baby. They said $4,500 minimum. She had $890. She went into labor on a Tuesday morning in August 1981. She was at the factory, bent over a sewing machine, when the contractions started. She tried to keep working. The supervisor noticed. "Rose, you okay?" Rose said, "I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. Her water broke on the factory floor. The supervisor called an ambulance. Rose begged her not to. "Please, I can't afford it." The supervisor called anyway. Rose was taken to San Francisco General Hospital. She delivered a baby boy at 3:47 p.m. He weighed 5 pounds, 3 ounces. He wasn't breathing right. His lips were blue. The nurses took him immediately. A doctor came in 30 minutes later. "Ms. Chen, your son has a heart defect. He needs surgery. Today." Rose asked how much. The doctor said $48,000. Rose started crying. "I have $890. The doctor's face softened. "We have a fund for emergency cases. Let me see what I can do." He left. An hour passed. He came back. "I'm sorry. The fund is empty. There was a car accident yesterday and we used everything we had. If you can't pay, we'll stabilize him and transfer him to county. But he needs surgery in the next 6 hours, and the transfer takes 4 hours to arrange." Rose understood what he was saying. Her son was going to die. She sat in that hospital room, holding her newborn baby boy, feeling his chest struggle for air, and she prayed. She wasn't religious. Her parents were Buddhist, but she'd stopped practicing when she came to America. But she prayed. To whoever was listening, "Please, I'll do anything. Please save my son." And then the door opened. A woman walked in. White woman, maybe 60 years old, dressed simply. She said, "I heard you needed help." Rose didn't know who she was. The woman said, "I volunteer here on Tuesdays. I heard about your son. How much do you need?" Rose said, $48,000. "But I can't. I don't have—" The woman held up her hand. "I know. Wait here." The woman left. She came back 20 minutes later with a hospital administrator. The administrator said, "Ms. Chen, the surgery has been paid for. All of it." Rose couldn't breathe. Who paid?" The woman said, "That doesn't matter. You just love that little boy." Rose tried to thank her. The woman said, "Don't thank me. Just promise me that when you're able, you'll do this for someone else." The woman left. Rose never saw her again. Rose's son, Michael, survived. The surgery worked. He grew up healthy. Rose worked 3 jobs to support him. She became a legal resident in 1986 through the amnesty program. She took night classes. She became a bookkeeper, then an accountant. She saved money. By 1995, she owned a small accounting firm in Detroit, where she'd moved for better opportunities. She made good money. Not rich, but comfortable. And she never forgot the woman who saved her son's life. She never forgot the promise. In 1998, Rose was at Detroit Children's Hospital visiting a friend whose granddaughter was sick. She was walking through the waiting room when she heard a man crying. She looked over. Young man, maybe 28 years old, holding a tiny baby, his wife on the phone, both of them in complete despair. Rose walked over. "What's wrong?" the man told her. "Their daughter. Emergency surgery. Insurance denied. $73,000. Rose felt something click in her chest. She said, Wait here." She went to her car. She kept cash in envelopes in her trunk, money she'd been saving to expand her business. She pulled out $73,000. She walked back inside. She paid the entire amount. The man tried to thank her. She said the same words the woman had said to her 17 years earlier. "You don't need to know my name, just love that little girl." And then Rose started going to Children's Hospital every Tuesday. She'd bring cash. She'd ask the billing department who needed help. She'd pay what she could. Some weeks it was $5,000. Some weeks it was $30,000. Over 26 years, Rose Chen had paid medical bills for 247 families. She'd given away over $4.2 million. She lived in a small apartment. She drove a 2008 Toyota. She ate simply. She had no husband, no other children. Michael, her son, was a pediatric surgeon in Seattle. He knew what his mother did. He'd tried to stop her. "Mom, you need to save for retirement." She said, "I'm repaying a debt." He said, "You don't owe anyone anything." She said, "Yes, I do. I owe everything." Rose had been looking for the Morrison family for 26 years. She'd hired investigators. She'd searched hospital records. But Daniel and Janet Morrison had moved from Detroit to Phoenix in 2003. The trail went cold. Rose kept paying bills every Tuesday, hoping that somehow the act itself would lead her back to them. And then, on November 12, 2024, she walked into Children's Hospital like she did every Tuesday, and she saw a woman at the billing desk crying while trying to pay for her son's surgery. Rose paid it, $18,000. The woman turned to thank her. "I'm Janet Morrison. I come here every Tuesday to do what someone did for us 26 years ago." Rose's breath stopped. "Morrison?" Janet nodded. "Our daughter Angela. Someone saved her life here in 1998. We've been trying to find her ever since." Rose's hands started shaking. "I'm wearing her visitor badge. From that day. I kept it." Steve Harvey said into the phone, "Rose, we're putting you on a plane to Atlanta. Right now. Today. You're going to meet Angela. You're going to meet Daniel. And you're going to stop carrying this debt. Because it's been paid. You've paid it 247 times over." Rose Chen was crying so hard she couldn't answer. Steve said, "Janet, you still there?" Janet said, "I'm here." Steve said, "Get Rose to the airport. I'm sending a car and a private plane. She'll be here in 4 hours." Steve Harvey hung up. He looked at Daniel Morrison. He looked at Angela Morrison. He said, "The woman who saved your life is coming here. Today. In 4 hours, you're going to meet the person who gave you the last 26 years." Angela Morrison couldn't stand. She sat down on the stage floor. Her whole body was shaking. Daniel Morrison knelt beside her. He was crying. Steve Harvey knelt down too. He said, "Let me tell you something. 27 years ago, I was at my lowest. I was ready to give up. And a stranger told me, 'God's got a plan bigger than your pain.' I held on to that. And today, watching this unfold, I'm seeing that plan. Because God's been planning this moment for 43 years. But Steve wasn't done. He turned to the crew. "Cancel the rest of today's taping. Cancel tomorrow's. I don't care. We're waiting for Rose Chen to get here. And when she walks through that door, we're filming it. And we're showing the world what happens when people choose to be the answer to someone else's prayer." He turned to the Caldwell family, the competing family. "Y'all okay with that?" Mr. Caldwell stepped forward. "Steve, we're not leaving. We're staying right here. We want to see this." Steve pulled out his phone again. He made a call. "Mom? Yeah, I'm okay. Listen, I need you to do something for me. I need you to pray. Right now. We've got something happening here that's bigger than this show." He paused. A woman spent 43 years repaying a debt, and today she's about to find out she's already free. 4 hours later, at 2:15 p.m., Rose Chen walked onto the Family Feud stage. She was 66 years old. Small woman, silver hair, simple clothes. She was shaking. The audience had waited. All of them. 200 people had stayed for 4 hours. When Rose walked through the doors, the entire room stood up. Daniel Morrison saw her first. His legs gave out. Angela ran to him, caught him. Then Angela turned and saw Rose. They stood 15 feet apart. The studio fell silent in a way it hadn't all day. Rose looked at Angela. She said, "I'm so sorry it took this long." Angela said, "You saved my life." Rose said, "And someone saved mine. I've just been trying to pass it forward." They met in the middle of the stage. Angela hugged Rose. Then Daniel hugged Rose. Then Janet Morrison came running from the side entrance. She'd flown in with Rose, and she hugged all of them. Steve Harvey stood to the side, openly weeping. He said to the camera, "This is why we're here. Not to play games, not to give away money. To witness moments when God closes a loop that's been open for 43 years. But Steve wasn't finished. He said, "Rose, you've given away $4.2 million over 26 years. You live in a small apartment. You drive a 15-year-old car. You've given everything to strangers. I want to ask you something." "Why?" Rose Chen looked at him. "Because I know what it feels like to hold your child and know they're dying and you can't save them. And I know what it feels like when a stranger walks in and says, 'I can.' I've been that stranger 247 times, and I'd do it 247 more." Steve said, "What if I told you that you're done? What if I told you that starting today, you don't have to carry this anymore?" Rose said, "I made a promise." Steve said, "And you kept it. 247 times over. You kept it so well that we're creating a foundation in your honor, the Angela's Gift Foundation. And I'm personally funding it with $5 million. And that foundation is going to keep doing what you've been doing. But you, Rose Chen, you get to rest now." The audience erupted. Rose Chen collapsed. Steve caught her. Angela and Daniel held her up. Steve said, "And one more thing, Angela, you're a pediatric nurse, right?" Angela nodded. "I'm hiring you to run the foundation, you and your father. You're going to help families the way Rose helped you, and Rose is going to be on the board. But she's going to stop giving away her rent money. She's going to live. For the first time in 43 years, she's going to live." The episode aired on November 26, 2024. It wasn't a regular episode. It was a 1-hour special called "The Stranger Who Changed Everything." The clip went viral in 90 minutes. Within 2 days, it had been viewed 340 million times across all platforms. #Angela's Gift was trending worldwide for a week. Donations flooded in. The foundation raised $23 million in the first month. Celebrities, athletes, regular people, everyone gave. Rose Chen moved out of her small apartment. Steve Harvey bought her a house in Phoenix, 2 miles from the Morrisons. She didn't want it. Steve said, "Rose, for 43 years you've been the miracle. Let someone else be yours." She accepted. Angela Morrison became the executive director of the Angela's Gift Foundation. In its first year, the foundation paid medical bills for 1,847 families across 32 states. Daniel Morrison retired from his accounting job and joined the foundation full-time. Janet Morrison continued going to Children's Hospital in Detroit every Tuesday, now as the Foundation's Detroit coordinator. 6 months after the taping, Michael Chen, Rose's son, the pediatric surgeon in Seattle, met Angela Morrison for the first time. They sat together for 3 hours, talking about what their mothers had done, about the miracle that connected them. He told her about the day he found out his mother had been saved by a stranger. He was 15 years old. She'd finally told him. He said he spent the next 10 years trying to find that woman. He never did. Angela said, "Your mother spent 26 years trying to find us, and my father spent 26 years trying to find her, and none of us could do it. But God could." 2 years after the taping, the Foundation had helped over 8,000 families. Rose Chen traveled to every city where the Foundation operated, meeting families, hearing stories, seeing what her one decision 43 years ago had grown into. In 2026, Steve Harvey did an interview with Oprah about the moments that defined his career. When Oprah asked about Rose Chen, Steve took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "That wasn't a moment. That was the moment. Because my phone rang 60 seconds into filming. 60 seconds. If I'd turned it off like I was supposed to, if my assistant had called 5 minutes later, if Janet Morrison hadn't been at that hospital that exact Tuesday, if Rose hadn't worn that visitor badge for 26 years, if any of those things had been different, that loop stays open." But it didn't, and I got to witness the moment when a woman who'd been carrying a debt for 43 years found out she was free. Today, Rose Chen is 69 years old. She lives in Phoenix. She volunteers at the Foundation 3 days a week. She has dinner with the Morrison family every Sunday. She finally bought herself a new car, a 2025 Honda, because she's still practical. She keeps one thing from 1998, the hospital visitor badge with the name Angela on it. She gave it to Angela Morrison at the taping. Angela had it framed. It hangs in the Foundation's main office in Phoenix. Under it, a plaque reads, "One stranger, one moment, 247 families. Proof that debt can become legacy." Sometimes the person you've been searching for has been searching for you just as long. And sometimes it takes 43 years for God to close the loop. And sometimes all it takes is a phone call 60 seconds into filming to show you that nothing you did in love was ever wasted. If Rose's story moved you, share it with someone who needs to know their kindness matters. Comment below about a stranger who changed your life. And if you or someone you know needs help with medical bills, visit the Angela's Gift Foundation at angelasgift.org. Because every stranger is someone's miracle waiting to happen.